So, Elizabeth, I have been thinking recently a lot about advocacy. When I think about advocacy, there's so many ways that I think we can think about it and approach it from a nursing perspective. So, what does advocacy mean to you as a nurse leader, and how does it really shape your day-to-day decisions?
Think that whenever it comes down to it, advocacy at the root of its definition is really about, speaking publicly for someone who isn't there. I think it's really important as leaders that, there's this saying about you want people who are surrounding you that they're going to speak highly of you whenever you're not in the room. And I think that's exactly what we do as nurse leaders is we're speaking for our teams whenever they're not there to speak for themselves. Just like as OR nurses, we speak for our patients when they're asleep and can't speak for themselves. So it's innate in us, right, to be advocates. And I think it's really important as we continue to grow up the chain that we are continuing to advocate for our teams and our patients.
Yeah, so I think one of the things we do really well is advocate for our patients in many scenarios, but I don't know if we always do it so well when we're advocating for ourselves. And so I think that nurse leader piece of it where we have to really dig in and advocate for our nurses as well as, all the people that we have on our team, which I think is a really fun thing that we get to do as perioperative leaders. We don't only lead nurses, we lead all types of professionals. But I think that advocacy for them is so important. And I think it helps to teach them as well how to advocate for themselves as we advocate for them. But can you think of a time where you had to advocate for your nursing team within your organization at some point? Give me a little bit of a story about something you had to advocate for was probably around a significant change. We have a lot of change in our environment.
Yes, definitely. Always. Um, I have a team who are board charge nurses, and we work in a really large enterprise, and so I have people here 24/7. So I feel like I'm almost always advocating for them, especially whenever they're here off shift, and you have people who are here and there's fewer resources, and you need to make sure that they have what they need to be able to take care of emergent patients and emergent cases. Um, so I am regularly advocating for them throughout the week while they're sleeping. Essentially kind of like our patients. I think it's one of those things that I am regularly coming to the table with all of our executive nursing team and our surgeons, and saying, hey, so we're running into this problem, and my team thinks that maybe this might solve that issue. Do you see any issues with that? What are the barriers that you might anticipate? And what kind of side effects or outcomes, we might could have from that. And so I feel like it's a regular thing for me to be advocating for my team, at the other tables that they're not invited to, essentially. But even down to from an operational standpoint of recently we incorporated the Neptunes into our system. Again, we haven't had them for 10 years, and our team has been asking for them, wanting them back because of all of the great benefits that they have, and a lot of the downsides to some of our other options. And so I was constantly at the table advocating for us to be able to get the Neptunes back because of all of the great benefits for our staff and our patients for it. So it's a regular thing, right? That we're advocating all the time, every day. And it's just really important to me, it's important for me to remain focused that I'm advocating for my team and my patients and not just for something that I want.
Absolutely. So leadership, we know, can be a powerful tool that we can use for advocacy. I always want to make sure that all nurses know that no matter what role you're in, that you are a leader. And so I think it's important for us that are in formal leadership roles to make sure that we continue to ingrain that in our teams, so that nurses know that no matter what level you're in, what title you're in, you have that leadership role. So can you tell me about any practices that you've implemented to just make sure that people know that leadership is an inclusive sport for the most part?
Um, Definitely. So for me, I think of it as regularly trying to empower my teams and my nurses to speak for themselves and to giving them the opportunity to be able to shine in front of the right people. Recently, I had a conversation with one of our nurses about she was sending a group text with a lot of people in it in order to basically say, hey, I think I anticipate this being an issue. So here's some, anybody have any ideas on how we might can work through those things? So I talked to her about it and I said, I really like what you're doing because it's important for all of these people to know that you are one, anticipating issues, but then two, that they're seeing that you can work through them. But there is one person on here that you have on this group chat who kind of starts to dominate the conversation and tries to make those decisions for you. And I don't think that person is necessary to be involved in the conversation. And I think what would help is if you have a conversation with that person, separately, and then you bring in that group chat without that person, then everybody else in that group can see that you have not only anticipated the issue, but you've worked through it and you've come up with some solutions. And so they're seeing that you're the one doing the work because right now you're being overshadowed and you are fully capable of doing this yourself. And I want everybody to see that you are. And so since then, she has now like started taking that into practice. And I literally had one of our surgeons come to me this morning and was like, hey, she really knows what she's doing. And I'm like, yeah, she has for a long time. But now she's getting to show it for herself. So
Amazing. Empowerment. I think us just really helping our nurses and our teams to understand how powerful their voice is and how to really shine and get what we need for our patients in those situations. So I love that. I love that story. So I'm going to shift a little bit because as I talked about in, a few seconds ago, advocacy is about lots of things when it comes to our nursing world. And I think advocating for our patients is why we do all of this. I think no one gets into healthcare if you're not expecting to take care of people. And so advocating for our patients is a part of that. I really believe that, patient advocacy is the heart of nursing. So how do you ensure that your patients' voices are heard and that they're prioritized within your environment at work?
so here we have a really robust group that works on patient experience. So we focus on, Press Ganey results, and we make sure that we are all being very intentional about having one-on-one conversations with our patients as much as possible. So we all have our own goals of, how many patients we speak to every day. And we keep track of all of that. And then we correlate the data with the Press Ganey results and everything, and making sure that we are like actually making an impact. And we can tell a difference whenever, we have an off month where there's a lot of people on vacation and, the results go down a little bit and things like that. But it is really important to me because of the fact that we're also talking to the patient's family members. And I think as OR nurses, it's easy for us to kind of lose sight of some of that because you only have those couple of minutes when you first meet your patient and their family to build that rapport. And so this gives our leaders an opportunity to be able to build a little bit more rapport. And then you see it also in all of your data too, with your SSIs and, all of the things that happen post-op and how your patients are doing afterwards and everything, and making sure that you are taking that information into your practice in the OR and how we as leaders are identifying trends and issues and concerns, so that we're speaking for the patients that we haven't even seen yet.
Absolutely. So I think many times some of our nurses feel like they are not necessarily heard at times when we're advocating for our patients. So being that our nurses are on the front lines always, whether that be leadership, formal leadership, or whether we're leading at the bedside, we're always on the front lines. So how do you empower your nurses to continue to advocate for patients when they feel like they're being unheard and they face some sort of resistance? I believe that's one of the things we still deal with a lot when it becomes, like things like incivility and bullying and other situations where people don't feel like they're being heard. How do you empower your nurses to be advocates in that moment when they feel like they're being unheard?
So, one of the things that I try to always teach our new nurses from the very beginning is to know your resources. There's so many different resources available, and that comes down to, your benefits package and also to your teammates and your leaders. And I think it's really important that whenever you have issues and you don't feel like you're being heard, that you're following the chain of command. And, if you feel like you're hitting a stumbling block, then you find a way around it, or over it, whatever it may be. So I encourage people that if you have something to say and you aren't being heard, keep saying it and find somebody else to say it to. Because it's really important. It's important for us as nurses. It's important for our patients. It's important for our profession, to make sure that we are really, truly being heard, and it matters. Nurses are absolutely brilliant. Like, we have so many incredible, I mean, you and I've talked about this, right? Like, this is people, there are nurses find ways to solve problems all the time. And if we aren't being heard, then there's a huge, huge situation that needs to be dealt with. So I try to just encourage our teams as much as possible. Don't stop. Don't ever stop. If there's a problem and you're not being heard, keep on saying it.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things that, I think my team really can appreciate about me too, is that, I really want to make sure that everybody is heard, and nobody hears and knows as much about the patient than those that are taking care of them every day and what they need. And so our goal is to just continue to work on it until we get exactly what they need. So, I mean, I appreciate people that just are never going to let it go until we get what we need. So I think we all just have to keep doing that. But we see that in all types of advocacy, as we advocate on a legislative level, as we advocate in, so many different, in the boardrooms, in the committee rooms, when we're working on things like SSI and other things. It's important for us to continue that work. So I think being able to have them to, stand up and be there with us and making these things, very plain to people so that they're clear and they understand is so important. So I can appreciate not letting it go. I think that's the most important part of that. I think a really interesting thing about what we get to do is that we get to explore that overlap between staff advocacy as well as patient advocacy. And so, how do you balance advocating for staff and advocating for patients, especially when both groups might need things that might be at odds in some of those situations? So, what strategies do you use in that type of situation?
It's interesting that you asked that question. I feel like oftentimes what our patients need is in line with what our nurses need, or our staff need too, and vice versa. Um, our ANO came in to us recently and said, it's really important that we remember that no matter what, we're keeping our patients' needs first. And our staff, their needs come first too, as long as it doesn't come to the detriment of the patients. And so I have continued to just really live by that, we're going to take care of our staff as long as it's not at the detriment of our patients. And then we're always going to be doing the right thing if that's the case, right? If we're taking care of our teams and what they need, and they're continuing to be able to take excellent care of our patients, then everything's okay. It's hard to see that sometimes, I think, and make sure that they aren't at odds. But as long as we're doing what's right for the patient, we're doing what's right.